I've really had the best seat in the house for the past 40 years at a Poison show. I get to see everything. I get to see the rest of my band. I get to see the audience. I get to look at the road crew. I mean, I see everything. If you're waiting for your ship to come in, you better have your bags packed and be ready to swim out to it. And I think that's probably important in many aspects of life.
Welcome to the Ageless Warrior Lab. I'm BJJ Black Belt and Dirty Dozen member Dave Meyer, here to draw wisdom from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the martial arts and explore how it applies to success in business, relationships, your long-term health, and making the most out of your life. What you're about to hear is an interview with my good friend Rikki Rockett. He's a founding member of and the drummer of the band Poison, which has sold over 50 million albums worldwide since their 1986 debut album, Look What the Cat Dragged In. Their most recent stadium tour was just a few years ago with Def Leppard and Motley Crue. I have known Rikki since the early 1990s. I introduced him to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he trained under my coach, Jean Jacques Machado, and now has a fourth-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, working with my good friend, Renato Magno, who is the owner of Street Sports Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Santa Monica, California. We talk about Rikki's finding martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the relationship between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and music, which is an interest we both share. I've mentioned that in the late 1980s, I played in a rock band in LA. And in fact, the guitar player from that band, Rebel Borja, did the intro music for this podcast that you just heard. Rikki and I talk about a health challenge that he's overcome and a bunch of other things. He's still on the mat training and still playing music. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with my friend, Rikki Rockett. Rikki, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for making the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And congratulations on being the first American with a coral belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Not the first, but one of the first.
Not the first. Okay.
No, not there's been a couple others, but thank you very much. Yes, it's a very unique thing. It's my reward for not having died and still training. As Hagen says, it's not just having died, it's not having quit. But thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't need you dying.
Exactly. None of us want to die. So people know you, obviously, for your great work with Poison, which we'll talk about, but people may not know that you are a very accomplished martial artist, BJJ black belt. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the martial arts and how you found BJJ.
Well, I was inspired by Bruce Lee, like a lot of kids in the 70s, and so was my dad, and we found a martial arts school, and that was Ishinryu Karate, and it was run by a guy named Harry G. Smith, who was a veteran, and he learned the art in Korea during the war from a Korean guy, a Korean black belt. But then one day the place closed down, and he had been arrested for taking on a cop.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And nobody wanted to fight him. The cops didn't want to fight him. But anyway, that's what I heard. That was the rumor. But the one thing that struck me was that martial art did not look anything like what Bruce Lee was doing. It was very stiff and stuff.
Yeah, very linear.
Yeah. So later, when I was, I don't know how old I was, maybe 15 or something, maybe 16, I became a lifeguard, and I kept going past this one Pai Lum Kung Fu school. I thought, well, that's closer to what Bruce Lee was doing. So I joined that school, and there was all these interesting katas, twist of the tiger and all this stuff. And I said, well, this is more similar, at least.
Right.
But I just literally just couldn't afford the time between school and work and the money and car payments and everything. I just couldn't do it. So I didn't do any martial arts for a long time. And then something struck me when we lived in a really bad part of Los Angeles, when our band had moved out to Los Angeles from central Pennsylvania. We lived in a warehouse, and there was a girl that had been raped that dated one of our road crew guys.
Oh, no.
And she came back to our house because she didn't know where to go. And one of our guys, we always had somebody at the house. I wasn't there at the time. We were out flyering and stuff like that. And he held the guy. The guy actually tried to chase her to our warehouse, and he called the police, held the guy until the police got there, and the police arrested the guy. And it turns out he lived in the neighborhood. and the entire neighborhood revolted against us. I can't make this up.
That's
So
crazy.
one night I was on duty to stay at the warehouse along with Bobby Dahl and another person, road crew guy. And we started getting bricks through our window. So we opened up to try to confront it, which was probably not the smartest thing to do. And we walked out, and there was a guy with a rusty knife. I mean, it
Hmm.
was rusty. It looked like he found it on the ground, literally. There was a guy with a bumper off the back of a car that he probably found on the street after a car crash or something. And he was going like this towards Bobby, caught him in
Like
the stomach
jabbing it
with
at
it.
you.
Yeah, stuck him with it, actually, cut him a little bit. And I could see in this guy's face with the knife that he would kill me. And I'm thinking, am I going to die here in this alley,
Yeah.
beside my house? I keep saying house, but it's a warehouse. And just then, the police came around the corner. Somebody must have heard all this ruckus going
Mhm.
on, or maybe somebody tipped them off that these guys were going to come after us
Mhm.
and stopped it. And we told the police our whole story. And we didn't really have any trouble after that. It was tough to even walk around the neighborhood unless you had people with you. And
Mhm.
I was determined that I was going to learn a martial art again when I could afford it one day, and especially something that had knife fighting involved. So years later, we were actually on our very, very first headlining tour. Brett and I decided that we wanted to train a martial art. So we hired a guy by the name of Mark Desco, who's finally got the reason he left working with us is because he got the role in the Crow TV show. Okay.
Mhm.
He was phenomenal. He was a phenomenal martial artist. And he taught us all the basics of the boxing and blocking and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, again, this seems boring compared to the movies, right? But it was real life. This is
It's what's
where I
effective, yeah.
it's where I started to maybe sort of put two and two together and understand what was really maybe going on. So then again, I was martial arts dry for a while, didn't have anything going on. And I had a summer or a period of time off. I remember, I don't remember what year it was. And I started looking around for a coach, and I found Cass Magda, and he was second generation Bruce Lee.
That's right. Cass Magda trained under Dan Inosanto, who was Bruce Lee's training partner. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, well, that would make me third generation if I do this,
Yeah?
right? So I loved Cass. And to smash cut forward, I still have a friendship with Cass. Still call him Sifu. He taught me so many things about many different martial arts because he teaches such a blend.
That's right.
And we did the knife fighting, we did the stick fighting, we did JKD, we did Muay Thai, we did Western boxing. It was almost like he wanted me to see the different ways of striking so that I could come up with my own way of going about doing it. Okay.
Right.
And then we started to go down the road of Lot, and Lot had some ground fighting, some of it. There's
Mhm.
140 styles or something, but some of them in Sumatra is a ground fighting style. And I went, wow, well, I wrestled in high school. This is perfect for me. I love this. I like grabbing a hold of somebody. I don't know what it is. I like hitting somebody, I guess, but I like grabbing a hold of them more. It's funny to say it that way, but
Well, actually, I think you could make the case that it's a more natural thing if we look at great apes or other primates making a fist and smashing it into something. It's certainly an effective way to fight, but it's sort of more instinctual that we grab, that we tussle, that we wrestle. Like little kids babies will do that. They will grab and roll around. So I think it's sort of more in our DNA to grapple. We have to learn how to strike, but I think we kind of are born with some sense of how to grapple, I think.
well, primates do strike too. It's a very primal
Ah, yes.
way they
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But then when you look at ground and pound fights, it's not a whole lot
Yeah.
different. Anyway, where was I?
You like the
So
sea lot, and you
I
like the
like the sea
grappling.
lot, and I started to go very deeply into that, and he
Mhm.
allowed me to do that. I learned that he had a blue belt under Hoist Gracie. I didn't know that. He just didn't talk a lot about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and didn't really incorporate it at at a more basic or intermediate level, but at more of an advanced level at his school. And it was right around the time that I had met you. We went to a rally where I think John Machado was at, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Jean Jacques may have been there, or maybe it was Hagen. I'm not sure. Do you recall?
No, I know I was working at an animal advocacy organization and you were volunteering and helping us. And I know we started
Mhm.
talking about BJJ at that time. I probably told you to come down and train with Jean Jacques in the San
Yeah,
Fernando Valley.
both you and him invited me to Jean Jacques' gym, which was the Machado Brothers. It was all the Machado Brothers at the time. And so I went down, and for one of the first people I meet is Eddie Bravo. You told me wear a pair of sweatpants and a shirt that you don't mind getting ripped. And I was like, wow, I don't know what this is going to be like, but okay. And I had Cass Magda from the Magda Institute. Eddie Bravo saw it and goes, I trained there.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we kind of bonded right then and there. And I remember he had a swimming hat on because he had long hair down there. And
Yes,
he had his
Eddie,
hair
when
ripped
he
out.
in the early days, he had crazy long hair. He used to braid up and then put in a bun, and then you're exactly right, would put like one of those swimming caps. It must have been so hot for him to train in that. He
I tried
eventually
it and
cut
I
his
couldn't
hair.
do
We
it.
used to tease him all the time, like, when are you going to cut your hair? But I think he was playing in bands at the time and he just liked his
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah. No, he had great hair, I got to say. So we didn't train that day, but you and I trained. And I thought this is not going to be a big deal. I'm pretty good at grappling. I'm pretty good at wrestling. I understand C-lot. I think I rolled with you, maybe Hanato, maybe another student. I don't remember. But I got killed every time, probably 12 or 14 times. I had to tap out, forced to tap out. And literally at that moment in time, I said to myself, I'm either going to never step foot in this gym or I'm going to come in here every chance I get. I need to really make a decision in my life right now.
Hmm.
And I went to the front and saw John Jock's wife. And I went, how much is it to sign up? I brought her a check the next day and been doing it ever since. So thank you for making me go.
I may have opened a door, but you're the one who walked through it and you've stayed with it all these years. And I know that you've continued on to train with Renato. I think that was just kind of closer to where you lived once Renato Magno started Street Sports and his school in Santa Monica.
The way that sort of went down was what I wanted to do after I took some classes was also do some privates because I wanted to get better faster.
Right.
And Cass had said, you really should do privates and you will get better faster.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. But I took one class with Jean Jacques. I remember the very first thing we did, very first technique we did. And that was for me to be on top and kind of swim every time the person put their hands on your
Mhm.
chest to try to push you off. You would kind of swim, knock their arms out
Yeah,
of the
kind
way.
of evade
Right.
their ability to push at your chest. Yeah.
Right. Very first thing. To this day, I do it. And it's a
Yeah.
basic, it's a jujitsu basic. But he said, look, I've got so many things going on. I just am not going to be able to do this on a consistent basis. But Renato, who came over from Brazil with us, is my cousin, and he's fantastic, and he would love it. And he's affordable and all that stuff. So I started with him, and I stayed at the Machado school until I was a purple belt. I think year three purple belt. And then I went on tour. And when I came back, Hanat called me up and said, I have my own school, would love to have you come over. And I went over and I just decided I liked everybody. It just felt a little more intimate, smaller
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so I just started at that school. And it was almost like you reset the clock. Like you were purple belt for 3 years, you're going back to zero, day one purple belt. I was a purple belt for 7 years, David. 7 freaking long years. Okay. And I think my move from brown belt to black belt was much shorter, like 2 years or something.
That's not uncommon. People tend to hang out at blue belt and purple belt for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I was a
Yeah.
blue belt for a long time as well.
Yeah.
But I think transitioning to another school, he was like, I want to build really good jujitsu guys and I want to do it my way. His teaching is a bit different than John Jacques.
Mhm.
I think it's a little more Hagen, a little more pressure game, a little more,
Mhm.
it's just slightly different. But the thing that I like about him so much is that he's extremely open-minded. That doesn't mean he forgoes his principles, but it means if somebody is an incredible boxer like Boom Boom Mancini used to come in, he turned the class over to him and say, "We're doing a boxing class today. You're going to walk out of here knowing boxing better than you did when you came in." And that is just as important as another jujitsu class. And we would do that. We had a Korean guy that was eighth in the world, and he taught a class in kickboxing. Just his way of going about it, coming from somebody that also trained jujitsu, was an incredible perspective. And I'm just so happy for all that
Yeah, you've had
information that
great
we got.
instruction. You were definitely in the right place at the right time. And not those wonderful, he and I are great old friends. He's actually now a coral belt as well. Got his
Yes.
coral belt the same day as Bob Bass. I flew out to Texas for that a year ago or so. Going back to those early days, you mentioned you were handing out flyers and you guys had come, Poison now had come to LA to get to the LA rock scene. I might have mentioned to you back in the day, we're talking like early 90s or whatever. I too was playing rock and roll back then, and I joined a band called Curves that actually had an album out on Capitol Records. Our manager was Tom Skeeter, who owned Sound City in the Valley. I don't know if you ever recorded out there. So we were kind of on the periphery, and we were a really good rock band, like danceable rock. And by really good, I mean not great. And as you know, in LA at that time, there were a lot of, and still are, I'm sure, really good bands. You've got to be amazing in some way, and we weren't. But we also had, you reminded me, because we actually practiced out in Chatsworth, and we had a permanent rented warehouse that we just had our setup so we could have A&R people come and hear us there. And it was also kind of a seedy part of town. But I ended up quitting music just because I kind of had this vision that I was going to, I don't know, save the world by doing music. And we weren't getting to where I wanted to be. And I decided it just wasn't worth it for me. You stuck it out. And I'm wondering, because you talk about how kind of poor you were at the time, and I didn't really go through that. And I'm just wondering what kept you at it? Because it seems to me it's kind of similar to jujitsu. It's really hard in the beginning, and it's
Yeah.
very easy to say, I'm never going to get good at this and I'm just going to give up. But you clearly have a stick to itiveness. Like you say, purple belt for whatever years. What is it in you that kept you at the music, that kept you at jujitsu? What is it about you, this stick to itiveness?
I'm looking at that purple belt right now, by the way. I have it up there. What did you play? Guitar, drums,
I
bass?
played keyboard in the band. I
Oh,
play
okay.
guitar as well, just sort of
Okay.
fun guitar, but I was a pretty decent keyboard player in the band.
Right on.
We recorded some stuff. I don't know if I can put it out onto Spotify because there's sort of rights issues, I guess, but I could ask the other guys in the band if they care, but I'll send it to you. It was
Okay.
decent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to hear it. I'm a pretty resilient guy, and I tend to do that with friends too. Sometimes I stay in friendships. I've stayed in relationships too long. I
Yeah.
believe that a lot of times, if there's a core of an idea that drove me to try something that really excited me, that I should stick with it and see it through because you see things differently over time. And sometimes you can go off track and off path and lose the narrative, as they say, lose the plot.
Mhm.
So I try to stay with things at least long enough to know if it's toxic or not. And jujitsu not being toxic, by the way, it can be painful. As far as music goes, though, I always felt like I never did give up. I always had other interests, and I still do. So it's always been my main interest. So I never felt like I had to give it up to do something else. Even when I was working, and I've had several different jobs in my life before Poison exploded in the scene, before we moved out here, actually. And so, I mean, I tried everything for a while. I was an EMT, I was a first responder at a young age. I was a lifeguard, and that was because of being a lifeguard. My dad was on ambulance, and so I wanted to try that. But I was pretty artistic, and I liked women, and so I became a hairdresser. So I was doing hair, mainly cutting, some color, and that was a great job because most every other job in Pennsylvania was either seasonal or you had to be outside in weather you didn't want to be outside in. First responders started to do both jobs as both fire and rescue at one point. That's how it is in Los Angeles. At the time, though, it was just you were one or the other, but it was starting to meld, and I would see these firemen up on the roof of ice almost falling off, and I was just like, "No, I don't think I wanna do that. I'll be
Right.
in a warm salon with some hot girl to making her feel great about herself."
So
And,
I gotta ask that the kinda glam rock, which you guys really were right there driving, that's like big hair and stuff like that. Did your hair
mm,
skills come in to help you create that amazing look?
yeah, 100%. Yeah. I've always had an eye for that. I mean, if I could have gone deeper into that world, maybe, become worked on models and did photography and all that kind of stuff. I think I have a really good eye for that sort of stuff, but it's a very political, not political in terms of like Republican Democrat politics, but the politics of that world is very weird and it's not my cup of tea, man.
I see.
And I would have never wanted to live in that world for very long. But the art of that was really cool to be around.
Mhm.
Really, really fun. I met some really, really cool people. I had clients coming from Philly, which is a 3-hour drive regularly to see, and
I never
sometimes I
knew
would
this. This
go.
is cool.
Yeah, 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 it was
Well, you're an
so, but I
artist,
mean,
and I guess it's an art form, like any other art form, right? You're kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
sculpting people in a way. You're sculpting people's hair. It's amazing.
It's a power trip, honestly. When somebody comes in, they don't feel great about themselves and they're kind of slunched down in a chair like this. And you kind of get in their head and find out what they really want to look like, what's going to make them feel good. And they look in the mirror and smile. That's a very, very powerful thing. Very powerful. And I don't mean a power trip like manipulative. I don't mean it
Yeah,
like that. I just mean it you
empowering.
feel like you're it's very empowering. I guess I should have, like, had a church of hairdressing or something.
Well,
But,
I'm sad to say my days of feeling that are long gone as with my
yeah,
hair, but I used to have
yeah.
long hair. Beautiful, you would have loved it. Beautiful, tight, springy curls. I'll put a picture of up if I can find one of those. You guys moved to LA, you were working hard, there were a lot of bands in LA at that time. Would you, in the same way that, like, finding a good teacher like Jean Jacques or Renato is a really important thing, I'm wondering, is there an analogy there with, like, finding the right band manager?
Oh, definitely. That takes a long time. Let me backtrack just a little bit because I want to
Sure.
cover something that was important. You talked about resilience, and one thing I am proud of, because at one point in my life, I was a deadbeat. I mean, I really was. I quit school. I went back and got my diploma, not GED. I actually went back, being too old to be in school. That's how my mind works. If I put my mind to something, I just do it. I mean, I was a dishwasher at one point and had quit school and was smoking pot every day and was
Hmm.
kind of a loser at one point. Okay. And I talk about this in my book, what kind of happened and changed me. But then once I was doing hair and I was still playing in the band, I'd always played in a band, always had a band. We would play literally on a Friday night. Usually you do 2 or 3 nights a week on the weekend, right? You do
Mhm.
like a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or Friday, Saturday.
You're playing at
We'd play,
clubs?
yes, yes, club
Mhm.
bars. I mean, in
Yep.
PA, it was bars, right? So we'd play a show and it would be 3 sets a night. And most of them would be top 40 stuff or whatever. And then you'd slip in one of your own here and there. And then at the end of the night, you come home 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, driving from wherever. And I would just drive right to the salon, lock the door, lay my head back in the shampoo bowl with a towel, fall asleep, and wake up at 7 o'clock to open the door for everybody. I didn't even bother going home. And I do that on a Friday and a Saturday. And then sometimes work on a Sunday because nobody worked on Sundays. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm going to make up for not being there on Saturday late afternoon because of doing shows. Anyway, there's that resilience.
Yeah, well, people look at you successful, and they don't often understand what it took to get there, and that's true with jujitsu too. People will look at someone who's really good at jujitsu, and they may not understand, they weren't always really good. It was a lot of hard work that it took to get there, and that sort of grind that you're talking about is the kind of story that a lot of people who are successful tell, like, you weren't born successful, and a lot of people had, like, dips and valleys in their life.
It's one thing Brett said that I always thought was pretty clever. He said, you kind of have to be smart enough to figure out how to do it and dumb enough to think that you actually can.
Oh, okay. That is a very quotable phrase from Brett, the
Yeah.
singer from Poison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're kind of you have to be one of these people, as Cece would say, where you're in purgatory, smart enough to know what's wrong, but not smart enough to fix it. So that's another take on it, right? So honestly, you just have to be crazy enough to think that you're going to be the one, because no matter what you do, you can push all the right buttons. You can be an amazing player, have the right songs, have all the right stuff, and still not get through the door.
That's
And
right.
you just wonder why. And it's all those things. It's timing. I've always said that if you're waiting for your ship to come in, you better have your bags packed and be ready to swim out to it. Because if you're
Mm.
just sitting there going, I'm just going to accrue all these things in life, and hopefully something will magically pick you up. And the Rush song, waiting for a phone to call and turn your world around, that whole idea, it doesn't work that way. You have to be ready to go. And then when you are ready to go and somebody notices that talent, then you're right there. You don't miss a beat. And I think that's probably important in many aspects of life, maybe all the way to love. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you're a person looking for love, make sure you're lovable and make sure that you have something to offer to somebody else. And when that person presents themselves, you're right there. You don't have to go work on yourself for 6 months or a year or 2 years and tell them to hold on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, look, martial arts too. We see in jujitsu like opportunities for the right move come and go, and they come and go in a flash. And if you're behind the ball, if you're waiting to see something or have someone hand you some position that is perfect for you, that's just not going to work. But if you're able to be in the moment and you have the skills, then you can be there when the opportunities on the mat present themselves and you can take advantage of it. So I think it is true across all of life, what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, do you agree? Maybe I've thought about this. Do you agree that the first year of jujitsu, you're not very proactive, you're kind of reactive to everything? Because you don't know what the person's going to try to do. Sometimes I used to just sit there, and I still do this. I let somebody go for a minute because I'm trying to see what they're trying to do. What's their game? What are they trying to do?
Well, because you just don't have things to do, you don't know what to do. So in the first year in jujitsu, you're kind of surviving. They say you start off the nail, then you become the hammer. That's what Jean Jacques used to say. So you're definitely the nail at that point. And I think people have learned some moves and they're trying to execute the moves they're learning, depending on who they're fighting against. But a lot of it is just things happening to you. I just had an interview with Caioterra, if you're pronouncing his name in Portuguese. And he was actually just talking about this. I don't know if you know Kaio, but he's a
I
great
do.
champion, but very, very small human being. Like he was fighting at the rooster weight and he had amazing success in the open weight class. I mean, just beating guys literally twice his size. And his whole thing is he was saying he never teaches a move. He teaches a move in response to a reaction. So he wouldn't just say, here's an armbar, do this, do this, do this. He would say, I'm going to teach you this armbar, but when the person does this, here's the armbar you should be doing at that time. So it's exactly what he was saying, that he feels like the best jiu-jitsu fighters, even if they're pushing the pace, are doing what you're doing a little bit. They're watching and seeing what you're trying to do, the opponent's trying to do, and then they're crafting their response to that. So they're doing the right move at the right time. And that's definitely how I fight these days, for sure. I would call it kind of counter punching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so there's the 5 ways of attack, right? Let's see if I can get this right. Okay. Simple direct attack, attack by deception, attack by drawing. Let's think of what the other two are.
I've looked it up.
Okay.
Bruce Lee's 5 ways of attack in Jeet Kune Do, so it is Jeet Kune Do, are respectively single direct attack, attack by combination,
Yes,
progressive
thank you.
indirect attack, hand immobilization attack, and attack by drawing.
All right. So I was kind of
Interesting.
right. I
Yeah.
was kind of right. But yes, the attack by combination, you see boxers do that all the time. Swing and it's a feint and then
Yes,
come in and
exactly.
hit. Jiu-jitsu, we do this too. Sometimes we'll grab a collar, but we have no intention of doing anything with that collar. but the
That's
guy
right.
will put his hand there and it's like, okay, great. Now you just gave me your hand or
Exactly.
whatever it is. And there's lots of ways to do this. But a lot of Bruce's philosophy, I really did end up using in the end
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
all the way back to when I was little wanting that and not understanding what any of it meant, all the way to now where I'm like, I'm kind of using those principles anyway.
One of the benefits of cross training, besides obviously, oh, okay, maybe in MMA, you want to get good at your boxing and your kickboxing and your takedowns and your grappling. But just in general, across martial arts, there's always little principles or little ways of looking at something that are completely transferable into life, but also into other martial arts. I had that experience in high school. I studied Silam Kung Fu, which is Southern Shaolin
Yeah.
Kung Fu, only
Yes, I know
because
what
my
it is.
friends were interested in taking a kung fu class, and I was already a black belt in another style of jiu-jitsu even in high school. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll check out the kung fu thing. For me, it was just fun, but it was a very stylized 5 animal system with different forms, dragon and tiger and that kind of stuff. But there was stuff we used to do called soft hands or sticky hands, which is just ways of manipulating and basically controlling someone's grip, directing them side direct. I do that in jujitsu all the time. That's a big
Yeah.
part of my jujitsu game. That little
Yeah.
bit from kung fu.
Yeah, from the Filipino and some of the Indonesian stuff, a lot of times my only defense against somebody that's a good striker is to grab this part of their arm and immobilize it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going to outstrike somebody that has done nothing but study striking. Again, let's go back to Bruce Lee. Never box a boxer, never wrestle a wrestler. Whatever he's good at, do something else. This is something Hanat likes to talk about too. If somebody wrestles up a lot, then that's when to really engage your jujitsu because it's going to throw that wrestler off. If somebody's super good at jujitsu, sometimes to use aggressive style of wrestling can throw that guy off his game, especially if you already know jujitsu. There's so many concepts, and really at the end of the day, what is it that works? For me, I don't think I'm a talented grappler. I don't think I'm a talented athlete. I think that I'm just stuck with it. I mean, Hanat will laugh about it. If somebody else gets it in 3 times he shows him, it takes me 7 times. Maybe that's why I was a purple belt so long. It just took me that long to really, really be a purple belt.
No, you were a good purple belt. I remember. Yeah, that's another thing that Kaio mentioned actually, that he too really struggled and was really slow to learn in the beginning. He advanced much quicker once he sort of got the hang of it. And actually, my buddy John Will in Australia says the same thing, that it was hard for him to learn things. So I think what happens there is if you have a difficult time with things, you're not super talented, and you stick with it, you learn things, I think, more deeply because you really have to work to learn. It doesn't just come natural and come easy. You get to see that with natural athletes. Like they're amazing and they do things, but they can't usually explain and very frequently can't teach what they're doing because it's just natural. It's just their natural
Right,
reaction. They didn't have to, in a sense, teach it to themselves. But going
right, right.
through that process of having to figure things out, especially if it's hard, you are sort of teaching it to yourself. And then I think you have a deeper understanding and it makes you not only really good at your execution of the technique, but opens up the potential of you being a very good teacher because you actually can explain what's happening because you had to figure it out for real.
I actually really like teaching when I have, and I haven't taught a whole lot, but I've done a couple seminars here and there. With Felicia O, I did a women's self-defense class, which was really cool because
Yeah,
I got to
she's amazing.
and it was very important for her to be there as a woman. It was also important for me to be there as a guy who could explain the thought process that a lot of men go
Mhm.
through when things start to get turned weird in social situations with women. Because I always try to explain to women, and if there's any women that are watching this, please hear this. Most situations almost always begin up close and in a grappling scenario with women. Very few times is a guy like going, okay, let's go. You know,
Squaring off like for a boxing match.
squaring off with
Exactly,
a
of
girl.
course.
That doesn't happen that much
Right.
unless you have a woman that's
Yeah.
super aggressive that's trying to push that or something like that. It's usually somebody trying to pull somebody into the bathroom because they
Mhm.
want to do a line with them or whatever it is. And you see that kind of stuff. And it's like, how are you going to react? And one thing I've noticed is that if you're taught to strike that guy right off the bat or hit him in the nuts or step
Mm.
on his toe or any of those kind of things, it's immediately becomes an aggressive situation now. It went from microaggression to massive aggression. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like with jujitsu, if it's microaggression, you can microaggression back and let them know, no, this isn't going to happen. And if it
Mm-hmm.
keeps going up, then you need more, of course. I kind of took the class from that angle, and I'm probably going to do another one in the same vein and talk about a lot of those same ideas because this kind of crap happens to women all the time, and it's terrible. I'm going through a situation right now, and I won't bog down on it, but my daughter was bullied at school pretty severely.
Hmm.
In fact, it was severely. She wasn't just bullied; she was attacked from the back, hair pulled down onto the ground and then hit on the ground after she was pulled down by the back of her hair. She never saw it coming. It was a sucker punch. And that's almost embarrassing because it's my daughter, right? But I looked at that situation and I'm going, I mean, for one thing, Lucy is not really trained very much. She's going to a couple classes with me here and there, but she never really trained. But it also makes her 100% the victim in this case, and nobody can know she didn't strike back at the person.
Mm.
It also made me look at how these things go down differently.
For sure.
And
No,
so,
there's a lot, Rikki. I actually just released an episode that's got a lot of views about reality fighting. And it's not focused on women, which is, as you say, a whole kind of a different thing, the way things go down with women generally with a male attacker. But how we train in martial arts is good, but there's a lot of very different things, like which I mentioned, that hair pulling, right? If you have long hair, I mean, that's a thing, especially if you're against an untrained or berserker person. If they get a hold of your hair, they're going to start tugging your head around. But I think there's a lot of application, whether it's weapon coming out of nowhere or being on hard concrete or wearing tight jeans so you can't throw a high kick because you got tight jeans on, or you're restrained because you've got a jacket, or multiple opponents, just crazy stuff. You're in a room, there's corners, you can't move effectively, you're on an airplane, just all of these real life situations that I think it's good for martial artists to just at least think about a little bit, train for a little bit to get more into like the reality of, okay, what's the real application of how I'm using this stuff? Because it's not going to be one against one on a soft mat with bare feet and loose fitting clothes or a rash guard or something like that and no weapons.
well, I also think self defense is a little bit, how can I say it, a little bit deceptive, just the, the messaging of it, because we don't really win fights by being defensive. We win fights by being offensive.
That's a great point.
You have to turn it around. You have to flip the narrative quick. Your best defense is to turn that offense around quickly.
One of the best ways to win a fight is to get off the first strike. I talked about in my podcast a whole system that John Will showed me about the fence, about basically putting your hands up and sort of testing, is this person trying to close the distance? Is this really going to be a fight? And making a decision before you wait till the person has smacked you in the face and now you're having to play catch up and recover,
Mhm.
and how to build confidence in a way that you could make the first strike, but in a way that it's obvious that you were not the aggressor. You were responding. You were scared. This person kept coming closer. You kept saying, please don't come any closer. Please stop hitting my hands. And then you realize, okay, this is kicking off. I need to set this up and get off the first strike. Hard thing to do, but it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, Cass and I used to sit in chairs and do this stuff. But this was the pose a lot of times.
Yes,
Would
exactly. Just for our listeners, Ricky's sitting with kind of one hand, like a folded arm across his belly, and then the elbow sitting on top of that, and the hand kind of by his jaw, maybe stroking his chin, talking, but you are basically just inches away from a serious fighting hand position, but it's a very non-threatening position for the other person. It looks like you're just
right.
thinking and kind of chilling.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, when you're in public, even putting your hands out like this a lot of times shows the camera
That you're being
probably
defensive, exactly.
that you're being
Yeah.
defensive. So to jump into a fighting stance right away is not always the best. Your fighting stance needs to look like you're defensive, but really it's an offensive move. You know what I mean?
Right.
I know this sounds very
No, but
over the top.
it's the reality of life. So
Yeah,
I want to
and
switch back
so
for a second to the connection of music and BJJ. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you learn individual techniques, and then of course you modify them for your own body. But whether or not you're good at Jiu-Jitsu or not depends on, okay, now we're live rolling. can you make these things your own? It's sort of an improvisation. It's a constant improvisation that's going on because I have no idea what you're going to do and we're moving into different things. And to me, that seems very much like music where there are certain rules. And so if it's guitar, there's chords or whatever, there's certain things that are just going to sound good and certain things that are maybe not going to sound good, but you can move through them and then they sound really cool. I would imagine it's the same thing with drumming. There's a straight beat, there's rhythms, but then you can start to play with the rhythm. As long as you understand the rules, you can now start to bend the rules and improvise. That's certainly like kind of like all of what jazz is about. But I think you get that in rock and roll too. Do you make that connection at all between both of these arts having guardrails that you need to learn to even understand what are the rules? And then
Mhm.
getting good at them is how you bend and break the rules. You're able to move kind of adaptively, but you're staying within a set of rules. I don't know if that's how you view music at all.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this happens in film too, rules of thirds and all this stuff, and then you break these rules if you know how to do them. But yeah, I mean, I've always said that drumming, particularly, is like jujitsu. It's 50% mental, 50% physical, just like jujitsu. It's a chess game, but I know it. And there's some physicality, no question. But the guys that are 100% physical always fall short. And if the only thing you're doing is thinking philosophically, again, let's go back to Bruce Lee once again. To find your true spiritual self, you must first step through the physical door. I don't think he came up with that one actually, but it's true. It is definitely like that with jujitsu. I noticed it with the Dog Brothers, rite of passage, push through pain and all that sort of stuff.
So, Ricky, you mentioned the physicality of drumming. Has jujitsu ever impinged upon that? Did you ever like injure your arm and you couldn't drum or something like that? Is that in your mind when you're training jujitsu? Like, don't injure your hands, don't injure your arms?
Absolutely. I haven't been injured where I couldn't play, at least like on a tour.
Knock on wood. Yeah.
Knock on wood, yeah. But I have gotten injured where I don't go practice because I did something. But yeah, I worry about that. We got one guy at our school that's like all about wrist locks, okay? And my wrists are super important, right? Are they part of a reality check? Yeah, they are. So are other things. I can do a can opener on a guy. Some of these things are just dick moves.
Right.
For me, I don't like the wrist locks because of what I do for a living. So I don't do them to people. And certain leg locks, I'll do leg locks, but I won't. The person, if they're smart, they know if I got them and they know if they got me. You
Right.
don't have to rip somebody with a leg lock. A leg thing will take a drummer out, especially if it's kick drum leg.
That's obvious now that I think about it, but yeah, because I just think of drummers using their hands, but obviously your feet are 100% engaged with your hi-hat and with the bass drums and just yeah, absolutely.
We're the one musician that uses everything. Now, I mean, piano players arguably with the pedal and stuff like that, or lap pedals
Yeah,
don't
it's
play.
I'm a piano player. It ain't like drumming.
Right.
It ain't
But
like drumming,
really,
no.
it is the jujitsu of musical instruments. Okay.
That is really interesting. It reminds me like motocross guys say that too, that if you're riding motorcycles, off-road motocross, it's using like all of your body in that sport.
Yeah.
And I know you're a motorcycle rider as well. But I think that when celebrities come through, I've taught some celebrities, Higgin, of course, does that all the time. It's reasonable. You have to make some allowances for that. I mean, if someone is a piano player, like a concert piano player, just don't injure their hands. It's hard for celebrities who are like actors to come through because you don't want to scuff up their face or break their nose. That can be a real career problem for someone. So I think it's very reasonable to understand who are you training with and what are the kind of limitations they have. So just kind of help them. Although it was never my impression training with you that you're protecting anything. You're just a beast.
I don't know, but I do protect my hands and my extremities a lot. I have a torn meniscus for years now, years.
Mm.
Simon did it to me. You remember Simon?
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
blonde-haired Simon.
Yeah.
Hope he's okay. I don't have no idea where he's at in the world,
Yeah.
but
An interesting
uh,
fellow.
yeah, but we shouldn't have been doing leg locks and blue belts,
Yeah.
and we were. But I worked around it and worked around it and worked around it and strengthened it to the point where it's not a problem. But do I think it would go quicker than the right side? Yeah, I do. So I tend to protect it more.
Yeah.
Just I'm not even thinking about it. You tend to protect certain things. We're all work around injuries or limitations, whether it's our height. If you're tall, you work around certain height restrictions in jiu-jitsu. If you're short, you work around that. If you have short muscle beds as opposed to, I mean, we all have limitations, and I'm not as flexible as I used to be. I used to do some crazy stuff.
Mm.
I used to love to do where I'd look like I was going to do a triangle and the guy would go to pull out and I'd stick my foot under and then do a sweep. And I I don't even know if I can pull some of that stuff off anymore. Now I have to work it differently. It's a different way of looking at it.
Yes, jujitsu is about adaptation. It's funny, I was mentioning this to Kaio also when we talked, because everybody I'm talking to, Ageless Warrior Lab, we're talking to people who've been in it for a long time. A strong interest of people who are watching is how do I keep training? How do I keep my body fit? Pretty much anybody I ask, like, what would you tell your younger self? They're all saying the same thing, like, protect your body, protect your joints, don't train as hard or whatever, because that becomes a thing as you get older. And of course, I go through that too. I'm 63 and still training, thank goodness. But those limitations that you accrue, it's interesting to me. We train with Jean Jacques, who has no fingers, just a little thumb on one hand. I mean, he was born with that limitation. Doesn't seem like much of a limitation for him. He's just amazing.
Right.
So jujitsu is about adapting. And one thing I notice is that it's like we anchor on how we were when we were young because we felt like that's when we were perfect and we weren't broken. And now, darn it, I can't do this because my hip doesn't work that way or my neck or whatever. And that's all true. But we were adapting even when we were young because you could have been stronger. You could have been more flexible. You could have been faster. But we didn't feel like we lost it. So we just took that for granted. We were just as strong as we were. So I think it's wrong to look back and for people to feel bad and say, man, I feel bad that I have to adapt in all these ways. I've lost all this stuff because they don't realize the first day on the mat, they already had limitations. Like you're saying, they weren't tall or they were heavy or they were super skinny or all of those were limitations. They just didn't feel like limitations because we were used to it at the time. So I think it's good to just assume we've always had limitations and now I've got some more limitations. And jujitsu is about adaptation. So adapt.
I think it's about doing the best with what you have.
Exactly.
That what being really good at jujitsu is. I've seen these guys on forums that are putting one super athlete against somebody else that's just really good at jujitsu and going, that guy would kill that guy. Well, maybe, but maybe this super athlete isn't really using so much jujitsu, but it's not a level playing field right at that point. On a level playing field, the guy with more of the technique is going to dominate. I mean, there's no question that size and strength and those kinds of things play a huge role. But that doesn't mean that guy deserves a black belt more than the other guy because he's not using jujitsu to achieve that goal. He's using jujitsu and something else combined to get there, where the
Mhm.
other guy's just using jujitsu to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never taken steroids or TRT or any of that kind of stuff.
Me
I just
neither.
don't do any of that. And, whatever's right for somebody is right for them. But I train with a lot of people that do, and I can feel the difference. And I can't help but to think a lot of times they're relying on that a little bit. And that becomes a bit of a roadblock for them
Mhm.
learning more technique because they can rely on that strength to get that motion to happen. I think when strength really matters is the transitions. I think once you're locked in a technique, strength matters, but it matters as less. I think it's transitioning from one place to another where that speed and strength really matter or change the game a little bit. And I think if you just rely on strength to get there only, I mean, who's really thinking and who's really doing the chess match if you don't have all that strength to rely on? If you really have to think of the leverage and the timing being
So this is always sort of a question, and it's kind of unanswerable, like how much strength to use. Because if we use no strength, you would be lying on the mat and not lifting your arm or lifting your leg. I mean, you have to
right.
engage a muscle to do anything in jujitsu. So
Yeah.
what is the appropriate amount of engaging a muscle or engaging speed or explosion that doesn't cover for bad technique? Basically, it's like an engine that has a good drivetrain, then it's great to have a good engine. Then you want, as long as you got a good steering wheel and you know where you're steering, then have a good engine and that'll make it even better, right? But
Absolutely.
you can't let that cover for bad technique and you can't let it keep you from learning technique. I think that there's this balance of staying relaxed, staying fluid, and then you can always bring in the strength if you need to, if it's a competition match or something
Yeah.
like that, or to stop something really bad from happening. But what is that appropriate amount of strength to still let the technique speak? Like, don't cover up the technique, let the technique speak. And I think that's just something everyone has to get a feel for themselves.
I think you should work on strength the older you get because we'll deteriorate otherwise. I work out a couple of times a week and then go to jujitsu on a different day. And I think a lot of times I've seen guys that were tremendously athletic and really good at jujitsu and learn jujitsu quickly. Then I'll see them years later and they're not training at all. And
Mhm,
part of the reason is because they don't have as much strength, so they started to lose confidence in themselves and just go, that's a younger guy's thing. Are you still doing that? Really? Like I've
mhm,
literally had this conversation. And I'm like, well, what's changed? And I'll look at their body composition. I can tell they're not as strong as they were. They're not as muscular as they were 10 years ago when we rolled. And a lot of it is because you're not learning everything you can if you're relying on other things. So when you hit a certain age, you kind of go, I've aged out of that now. So
mhm,
I really think longevity in this is finding a really, really good balance. If you want to compete, okay, these days at an elite level, you have to be an elite athlete too, I think.
mhm,
I think you really need to dial in your diet. You really need to dial in your
mhm,
strength and exercise and flexibility and your jujitsu. I think you need all those things. But I think if you're just trying to learn jujitsu and you want to stay in the game for a long period of time, I think that as your strength tapers off, you need to try to supplement it, but you add more solid technique. And I don't want to say
yeah.
new technique because you look at Clark Gracie, who's very basic and is almost unstoppable. I mean, he's been beat, but the guy's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
And it's just the basics he has are so solid. It's not complicated jujitsu at all.
I'm old school. I'm a big fan of basics. But look, I think new stuff is good because that keeps it interesting and it keeps it fun. But to your point of aging, I've always been a fan of what I call homework. Do your homework, your muscular, your exercise, your fitness, your diet, all the things that you do off the mat to stay healthy and your joint mobility and all those things. And I didn't, when I was young, do any kind of weight training. It was all calisthenics, all isometrics, push ups, pull ups, all that kind of stuff. But I did start doing some weight stuff, and I do believe in that. It's good to just keep your shoulders strong and keep your body in balance. Because as you know, we do certain moves a lot in jujitsu, and that's going to create certain imbalances. It just is. And so you want to have get back in the gym and do some squats and do some things to just keep a balanced body, but not,
Right.
as you say,
Yes.
turn it into something that now you're relying on that strength and you're using that instead of technique, because then as you do get older and as that strength goes away, you're going to essentially lose your ability to do jujitsu. So again, it's a balance, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I have a question for you. One of the most fun things for me back in music days was performing live. I just love to perform live. I truly
Huh?
miss that. And I love just sitting in a living room at a party and playing music with guitars now. A couple years ago, I realized my icons, Aerosmith and the people kind of I grew up with, they're all getting really old. Some of them are still playing, some of them are not playing. They're all going to die soon. So if I haven't seen them live, which I hadn't seen most people live, go now. And then I quickly realized, you know what? I don't splurge on anything. I don't go on vacations or whatever. I should just pay the money it takes to sit closer to the stage because why not? Otherwise, you're just watching it on a screen. And so I did that. And I basically, over a few years, spent a lot of my savings to just go and get fifth row, sixth row. And I just love it. It's the most fun I've ever had. But one of the reasons it's fun for me is not only I feel like I'm in the living room, like watching someone play, like I was elbows on the stage watching Elton John. It was like he was 10 feet away from me. It was just one of the most transformative experiences of my life because I'm a piano player and I
Yeah.
love that. But it's also to turn around. It's not the same as being on the stage because the lights are not in my eyes, but then see the whole arena pretty closer from the point of view of the guy on the stage. And I'm just like, oh man, that must be so much fun. I'm wondering from your point of view of the guy who does step out onto the stage and sees the arena like that, are you nervous? And is that anything like the nervousness you get when you're stepping out like into a jujitsu match? Like I'm very used to that kind of nervousness, right? But I make a mistake in a jujitsu match, I lose. You make a mistake in front of 30,000 people, that's kind of a bummer, or your bandmates will look at you. But I'm just wondering, do you feel pressure, I imagine excitement when you walk out onto a stage, and is it anything like stepping out into a jiu-jitsu competition, or is it just totally different?
It is a little bit. I mean, like I said, I wrestled, so I did get that feeling of walking out and getting ready to grapple with somebody. But I've only competed once in jiu-jitsu, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask this, but it's weird how I have relationships with the audience, and I do. The minute I get out on that stage, I start scanning the faces of everybody, and you start to figure out who you're gonna need to win over, who you've already won over and you don't wanna let down. I mean, you just kinda start figuring it all, and sometimes you can't see certain people and
Yeah, I
different
would
things
have
like
assumed
that.
there's lights in your eyes and you can't see anything.
But I was just talking to my wife about this because she also played and she still does. But the smaller the audience, the more nervous I am. I swear.
I've heard people say that before because it's more personal.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just 2 rows of people, some kind of a weird event like that, a private event, yeah, it's like they're studying every little part of you. It's, like, weird, or you get self-conscious. It's just but, like, when you're performing, it's like it becomes more Olympic somehow. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I really wish I could. I need to figure my book, the way you said when you look out into the audience, my book's coming out pretty soon.
Ghost notes.
Ghost Notes, and I really originally wanted to name it Best Seat in the House, but that name was taken because I've really had the best seat in the house for the past 40 years at a Poison show. I get to see everything. I get to see the rest of my band. I get to see the audience. I get to look at the road crew. I see everything. I mean, it's like I'm the third eye of the band. I'm all seeing.
That's amazing. People say the drummer and bass and rock and roll, but the drummer is like the spine of the band, like you're holding
Yeah.
everything together. You really are the commander.
Yes. Yes. And I had another conversation with somebody recently. Trying to think of who it was. But it's like we're all responsible for our own time. A lot of people will look back at the drummer and go, if this is speeding up, it's your fault, right? And it's like correct to some degree, but everybody's responsible for their time. And that way the whole band can move in sync. And that's why
Right.
some nights it feels better than other nights, or some musicians work with other musicians differently.
So is that an issue in your band?
It has been if somebody was high or something, but
Oh, yeah.
nobody's high in our band anymore on stage. But what I do notice naturally is that I naturally play slightly behind the beat. So it almost sounds like a flam, if you know what a flam is.
Yep, but
Okay. So I'm playing just a little bit behind. CC tends to play a little bit ahead.
ahead
And
of the
there's
beat, yeah.
this tension, and the tension makes it feel like it might fall off the edge of the earth any second, but it doesn't. And to me, that's the beauty of live rock and roll, is that you feel that tension. And you notice this with the Rolling Stones. It doesn't feel the same. I mean, Steve Jordan is a fantastic drummer, but Charlie Watts created this tension
Yeah.
that was just really weird, and it made something completely different than anybody else. It's almost like your mistakes become your trademark.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting, and I just love music. I'm listening to music all the time, especially classic rock, but to nerd out with you for a second, John Bonham, Zeppelin, he always felt to me like he just a little bit behind, just kinda keeping it relaxed, and it was such a unique thing, and his son I've seen his son play, and he's kinda got it. He's really, really good.
Oh, he's great. Jason's great. He's a
Yeah,
good guy
Jason
too.
Bonham, yeah, but I think it really does make a difference, and maybe people who aren't musicians can't perceive it. I remember when I used to perform, there was always a tendency to speed up because 'cause you're just excited, right?
Yes.
And that was right when drummers were starting to use click tracks, so the drummer wouldn't themselves speed up, and I don't know if that's cheating or not, but
No,
it's
it's not at all. It's a referee because there's so many different things that play into that excitement. Sometimes I use a click and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just to start the song
so you get going at the right beat, yeah,
and then we're good. I'm pretty good at staying steady. I learned that pretty early on. I think my first
yeah.
year playing live against a big audience, I think I probably messed that up a lot, but I learned quick.
Well, I think that is the same in jiu-jitsu competition. When people are excited, they start moving too fast, they start gripping the gi too tightly, they burn their forearms out. Like, you
Mhm.
act differently when you get excited, and I would imagine that a key thing performing, especially you get good at it over years, is just not getting so excited that you're losing your composure. You just gotta kind of
Right.
find the truth within yourself and stick with that regardless of what's going on in front of you.
Yeah, so I've said this to people before, the difference between seeing, just some band, weekend band, and a pro band is that the pro band doesn't play too fast. Everybody plays too fast. You can always tell when it's amateur hour because somebody's going out there and just steamrolling these songs. When
Mhm.
they sit back in the groove, and it sounds heavier when it's a little bit slower too, usually, depending on what it is that you're doing. But it just separates the pros from the non-pros is being able to sit in that groove.
I wanna be respectful of your time. I did have one question, if you wanna talk about any major life challenges that you've had, because I know you've had a health situation that you've talked about a bit in the past. How has that affected you? Are you clear of it now? Anything you wanna share about that?
So I've had 2 types of cancers, okay? So I had head and neck cancer. I had a tumor on my tongue and associated lymph nodes to go along with it, and it was really tough to get rid of. So the chemo and radiation did not work,
Mhm.
and I wound up getting on a clinical trial, and that clinical trial was immunotherapy, and I did that at Moores Cancer Center in San Diego. Dr. Ezra Cohen headed up that, and within 9 weeks, I was 90% cured. Within 18
That's
weeks, it went
fantastic.
away and it never came back. So that was an experimental drug that got fast forward after that trial. I wasn't the only one on that trial, of course. I wasn't the only person in this country. And then during the trial, it was supposed to be a 2-year trial, but I was only on it 8 months. At the 8-month mark, my white blood cell count went super high, and they couldn't quite figure it out. And I had one very smart doctor looked into it. His name's Dr. Patel, Sandeep Patel. And he said, let's do some leukemia tests. And he did them. And sure enough, I had CML, chronic
Hmm.
myeloid leukemia. So it's one of the myeloid leukemias. There's a few other ones. And guess what? It's the best one to have if you're going to have one because it's pretty much curable with a pill. So
Mm.
after a couple years, that completely went into remission. And I've been zero cancer cells with both cancers.
And it's gonna remain that way forever.
Yes. So, I mean, I just had a scare. I have a sore throat right now. I went to see my ENT and he scoped me and there's a little irritation on my vocal cords. And I don't get to have sore throats. I get to have 5 alarm freakouts now.
Oh,
I
of
just,
course, and once you've
yeah.
been through that, I totally
And,
can imagine.
but
Yeah.
I'm very dry. So, I mean, I always have like a spray
Mhm.
because my salivary glands don't work that well because they got radiated on
Mhm.
the first go round, and I have muscle soreness. Sometimes my neck will just pulsate and it'll cramp out of nowhere. It happens a lot, unfortunately. People get Botox. I don't want to do that if I'm in jujitsu. I just don't think it's a good idea. With the CML, I'm cured, but with the pill. So I
Mhm.
have to take one pill every night and it keeps me in remission. I'm on it for the foreseeable future. Some people after 10 years are able to get off of it. So we're looking into that. I'm not at 10 years yet. And it has side effects. Some days I just get crampy. I mean, I'm just crampy. I found though if I push through the first 15 minutes of training, I can usually get through that little wall and I can keep going.
So you're saying physical cramps?
Yeah, physical, yeah. It's in my body from the
Yeah.
medication. I don't like taking the medication, but it's life-saving for me.
Oh, yeah.
I have a phenomenal doctor named Dr. Jameson. She's one of the top hematologists in the world. I'm very lucky to have her. I mean, it was incredible to watch the chart. It just dropped to zero. I mean, it was incredible. She doesn't like me taking, I have to run every supplement, everything I do, I got to run by her. But outside of that, I get up every morning and I have breakfast and do everything just like a normal human being. I just have to keep an eye on my hydration. I have to take that god darn pill every day, which I don't like doing. I don't like taking anything.
Of
I'm one of
course,
those
of
people.
course.
But I mean, once we hit a certain age, most of us are taking something for something,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Food, an apple is made of chemicals, a banana is made of chemicals, we can synthesize chemicals, we make clothing to wear that is not quote unquote "natural," but it keeps us warm. I think it's fine. it is what it is. I went through this crazy psychological thing I'll tell you about sometime, but it was kind of a
We
PTSD
talked about that,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe related to the rescue and the stuff I saw down in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of dead bodies and stuff. But it came at me years later, but at some point I decided, "Hey, this is just not manageable on its own," and it was getting worse, and I was so against my thinking to take any kind of a pharmaceutical or whatever, but I'm glad I did. I think it was helpful. I think the thing just kind of passed and stuff, and it's gone now, but it's just like I say, an apple is made of chemicals, a banana is made of chemicals. We can synthesize some chemicals that are helpful in fighting cancer. So
Right,
it is what
yeah.
it is. No judgment on any of it. You do what you do to live a good, healthy life.
I learned a lot about quote unquote evil big farm, which I no longer believe it in the same way that I did. Okay. I'll put it to you that way. Because my experience was seeing a tremendous amount of doctors and people that really do want to see people cured. The thing
Oh,
is
sure.
that there's thousands of people that want to be cured, and there's only hundreds of abilities to get that help.
Right.
And there was some politics involved in that a lot of times. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject
Oh,
to go
any
down.
industry has its good side and its bad side. I work a lot these days with the food system stuff and trying to make a more humane food system. The way animals are treated is just terrible on factory farms right now. And so there's systems that are bad and there's people trying to make money, but there's also great people. I mean, farmers, ranchers, wonderful people who are not trying to be cruel to animals or whatever. So I think any
Right.
big industry, you've got both. You've got bad stuff and you've got good stuff in that too.
I've learned that when you throw a big flag or banner up and try to get people to stand behind it, sometimes you're off to a bad start just with that because there's nuance. Most people are not all bad or all good.
That's right.
But I think trying to be better, that's the key. None of us are going to be perfect. None of us are going to be one of these shining examples. I mean, you're seeing it right now in the Epstein files where there's people that are casually associated, but for reasons that have nothing to do with pedophilia whatsoever,
Mhm,
but their names have been dragged into it. And then there's people that really should have their names dragged into it in a
mhm,
serious way. And the baby's getting thrown out with the bathwater right now. You know what I
mhm.
mean? The other thing I wanted to talk about really, really quickly, and I'm not going to opine on this whole thing with Andre because I have no idea, but I'm just hearing noise about misconduct, right?
What we're talking about for listeners who don't know is a controversy occurring somewhere right now about some inappropriate behavior between a teacher and some of the students. And this does happen in jiu-jitsu. It happens in the martial arts. It's very frustrating and sad when it does happen. And, the question is, as things are coming out, we'll learn more about whether just how real it is.
So I don't know. But before I got married the first time, I was accused of rape.
Hmm,
And the way it shook out was that it was a woman who I had never met in a part of Mississippi I had never been to.
hmm,
And I was completely the wrong person. It was completely another guy who said he was me. And either she believed it or she was telling the police that she believed it. But it wasn't me. I wasn't there. I was 100% exonerated. But it showed me that there was a lot of people that get blamed for things that they should not get blamed for. And when people, like right now, my daughter going through what she's going through, she's being accused for something she didn't do. This is part of the reason she's getting bullied. People
huh,
will believe narratives. And we're in a time right now where we're hearing all kinds of narratives. So I don't
yeah.
know Andre Galval myself. I've never even met him. I mean, I admire him as a grappler and as a teacher, of course. I think everybody should just wait for a minute and let some of this come out at the end of the
Yeah, I
day. He
agree.
may be,
Everyone deserves a fair hearing. In the days of social media, people rush to judgment, and that can be not fair.
yeah. I mean, it's leaning where it's looking not so great for him, but
There is an issue in look, in any environment, but in martial arts, there's kind of like the teacher has authority and there's a lot of men and women, but
this isn't regulated. You could, not you, okay,
yeah,
but Joe, whoever, can open a jujitsu school and can be a registered pedophile,
right.
but he can still open it. There's nothing says he can't teach jujitsu
Mhm.
or be an influencer or
Right.
whatever. I just caution people so much of to really, really look at all these different who's influencing, why are people saying what they're saying, like Dr. Peter Attia. You mean? It's like,
Yeah.
wow, who would have ever thought that? I don't know if you know much about what's going on with him. He is in the Epstein files, and it's that smoke has a lot of fire behind it, unfortunately. Mhm.
I'm not familiar with it, but I will check it out. So, just before I let you go, current projects, you mentioned Ghost Notes, your memoirs coming out. I gotta tell
Mhm.
you, by the way, and I think I said it when we talked before, I love Poison. I love Devil City Angels, that project you did. I think it's
Mhm.
really great music there, and now you've got Rocket Mafia. So, what are you working on right now? What do you want people to know about?
Well, Poison is not going out on the 40th anniversary tour. It's the 40th anniversary of is our very first record, which is Look What the Cat Dragged In. So it's been bestowed upon me, I think, to get the Rocket Mafia to go out and do that first record, top to bottom, and call it Look What the Mob Dragged In. And so we're starting that probably in May, and we're going to go just do a bunch of shows for the spring, summer, and it's going to be the Look What the Cat Dragged In record plus some more songs. We're going to add some other things in there too for the fun of it. Sprinkle it with some other fun stuff.
That's awesome. And when does the book come out?
Well, the manuscript was turned in last week, so they say 90 days because it's a rare bird, but rare bird just signed with Simon and Schuster, and Simon and Schuster require 90-day turnaround. So the clock is ticking. They'll give me a release date very soon. We're looking at probably April, May, somewhere in there,
If
I
there's a
would say.
link to pre-purchase it or whenever a link becomes available, I'll add that to the show notes.
Yeah, thank you.
100%. Well, Rikki, you are amazing. You're a good friend. I'm so
You
glad we
are.
got this time together.
Thank you. Thank you. Second time's a charm, I promise.
Exactly. Yeah, we had some technical issues the first time, but we got it done. Stay healthy. You keep going. I'll see you sometime when I'm down in LA. And thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Rikki Rockett. Do leave a comment on the YouTube channel and let me know your thoughts. I read and respond to all comments. You can also like and share. And if you're watching on Apple or Spotify, please give the show an honest rating there. I will be back next week with more lessons from the lab. And until then, keep developing your strength, your wisdom, and go out and do good in the world.